All right, if everyone would take your seats, we'll begin with our next workshop. All righty, before I present our next presenter, I do have two other announcements that I need to make this morning, and their names were called in the roll call of pastors, but they hadn't properly been presented. And so we are pleased to have joining us as a pastor supply at Bethel Church in Lowell, Massachusetts, the Reverend Sherelle Roberson. And if she would just stand so that everybody can see who she is and give her a proper welcome to the pastoral ranks. She's been serving there since the beginning of September and is doing an amazing job. And that came about as Reverend Janine Daly was assigned to Allen Church in Providence. So we're thankful for her. And then certainly you will hear her introduce herself a little later on, but the Reverend Tamisha Mills, if you stand, is our pastor at St. James in Danbury. And so we welcome you to the district and your first district conference among us. I don't think I've left out anyone who's new and just starting. I think we've got everybody covered. But thank you both, and again, make yourselves at home, and everyone's supporting you and encouraging you in your work. So it's my pleasure now to present our next presenter, who is none other than the Reverend Dr. Gregory G. Groover, Sr. And one of the things that is always a concern for me is the lay leadership of our church. And I think it is critically important that stewards and trustees realize their role and responsibility, and also the privilege that comes in serving. In the AME church, in the absence of the pastor, it's not an assistant minister or an associate minister, but it is the pro tem of the steward board who carries on the work of the ministry, designed millions of years ago, but that's the work of the church. So if that's who we're leaving the responsibility, whose hands we're leaving the responsibility in, it serves that these folks need to be fit for the challenge. And we've got a lot of stewards who've been serving for a number of years, and then we have some who have come into our denomination over the last 10 or 20 years from other denominations, and it is helpful to understand what a steward, who a steward is, who a trustee is, and their level of responsibility. So Reverend Groover is going to help us revisit the roles of stewards and trustees. This is for pastors, clergy, as well as for our lay leadership. We're in your hands, Reverend Groover, and thank you.
Thank you, Elder, and thank you for this honor, and it is an honor to share and to be a part of this experience. I gave the handouts to pass out. Did everyone get them? We wanted them. So whoever has it, if you can do it quickly. There were 200 copies made, and we're hoping, I think we have, around 200. If please only take one. Who did I give it to? There were 200 copies that I brought. Maybe somebody can help you so we could save some time. I think this would facilitate the time if we have the handouts and we can go through it. We also have I want to again thank Presiding Elder for this opportunity and share with you that the intent of this time, we're not going to do what you can do by reading your discipline. So this is not a let's go to page 95 and read the discipline. You need to read the discipline and know your responsibilities. This is just some thoughts from one pastor regarding the enormously important and most sacred role of stewards and trustees working with the pastor of a local church. Did everyone get a copy? Quickly, if we can, so we could, we're running out of time, and I want to honor the time so we can get ready for worship. If you didn't get it, please raise your hand. We're going to begin this. If we can put this. Oh wait, wait a minute now. That's a different Greg Groover. I don't know how that got up. That is not part of my package, but it really isn't. That's my son's professional photo as a professional musician. Well, I'll tell you what, if we can go to the true or false page, if we can put it up on the screen. And this is just a quick exercise to begin this workshop. All right, the first, and we're going to just, if you can answer by show of hands. The steward board, trustee board model in the AME Church is comparable to the deacon trustee model in the Baptist Church. If that's true, raise your hand. If we can get to that page, that will be the next page. All right. Some of you, all right. How many would say false? Many of you didn't raise your hands. Say that again. You say that again? Oh, okay. Well, the answer is false. The answer is false. Often we compare it and we say it is, particularly those who come from the Baptist Church, the role of the deacons and stewards are they're not 100% the same. And second, the role of the trustee in the Baptist Church as opposed to the trustee in the AME Church, they're also measurably different. And we'll be talking about that. So that's a false. And we need to stop using that parallel that we often hear a lot. Number two, a 3-member steward board or a 3-member trustee board is permissible. If it's true, raise your hand. If it's false, raise your hand. The answer is true. It is true. The discipline clearly states that a steward or trustee board can have no fewer than 3, no more than what? 19. And particularly for our family-sized churches, my first church that I pastored in the Bronx had 3 stewards and 3 trustees when I first went there. So that is permissible. 3, stewards are responsible for the spiritual matters of the church, while trustees are responsible for the financial matters of the church. Anyone says true? No, that's not true. It's false. It is. And we will talk about that as well. Stewards, let me just say this. This paradigm of we do this and they do this, stewards, first of all, stewards and trustees ought to be spiritual in temperament, right? It's not just the steward board. Trustees ought to take their task, their role. This is a spiritual ministry that the Lord has given to me, and I'm working on it primarily. Yes, I may have the business acumen. I may have some even financial background, but I'm coming primarily to this role from a spiritual understanding and a spiritual foundation. So that's the second. So that the other thing that we need to remember is that in terms of the finances, ultimately, it's not in the hands of the trustees. It's in the hands of the steward board. It really is. If you reach a discipline. Now, some churches use the optional governance model, which is excellent. It's not required for all churches. It's an optional. And one of the optional commissions involves the Commission on Stewardship and Finance. We have it at Charles Street, and it's a very active board, and it's a 9-member board, 3 stewards, 3 trustees, and 3 members who are not officers. But ultimately, at the end of the day, in terms of the financial state, the health of the church, the steward board is responsible for overseeing and making sure that the church is financially healthy. Repeat it. Well, that the steward board is, the steward board is not just responsible for taking care of the spiritual matters of the church. We often think that. But no, the steward board is responsible for the spiritual, financial, the overall. And this does not in any way minimize the critical need and importance of the trustee board. Because without the trustee board, we would be in trouble on a number of fronts. This also does not minimize the importance for those churches that elect to have a commission on stewardship and finance. They play a critical role. Our vice chair of our commission on stewardship and finance is here today, and her role is extremely essential at Charles Street. But the steward board, if the bishop would need to meet with the church, if the presiding elder would need to meet with the church about a financial challenge, I don't want to say crises, they would meet with the steward board first. Let's go on. Number 4, a strong and active steward board, along with a strong and active trustee board, will most likely result in a strong and vibrant congregation. True? True? Everyone agrees with that? That's right. 5, while the steward board and trustee board have different duties, they are equal and parallel in authority. True? How many say true? How many say false? Okay, yeah. They're not equal in authority. Now, again, it doesn't mean that one is greater, one is better than the other. No. But in terms of their scopes of responsibilities, in terms of the initial design and vision of both boards as stipulated still in the discipline, it's very clear that the steward board has a lot of responsibilities. And so does the trustee board, but they're not parallel, equal. Let's go number 6. Stewards should be more holy in temperament, while the trustees should become more business-minded. How many of you? We all know that's false. I think some of you are just putting your hands up just to but we know you really know. Number 7, the pastor nominates the stewards and nominates persons who are qualified if elected to serve as trustees. That's a trick question. True or true? False? It's true. True. We often say no. Read the discipline. We often say appoint. Pastors appoint. Pastors literally. I learned this from Bishop Frank Curtis Cummings when he was our bishop. He taught us. No, stewards are also nominated. Why? Because they need to be confirmed by the quarterly conference. Pastor only nominates. And pastors only nominate trustees, right? It's supposed to be twice the number on the ballot, and then the church conference elects those trustees. So stewards, we use the word appoint, nominate. We use it a lot. Interchangeably, but the correct term is the pastor nominates. Yes. Oh, very much so. If they're members of the quarterly conference, they're voting. She's asking what role would the members have in the pastoral nominations of the stewards? And my answer is, remember, we often say, and I say this in full due respect to our presiding elder, a presiding elder presides over the quarterly conference. The presiding elder does not confirm the stewards or the church school superintendent or the Christian ed director. The quarterly conference, the presiding elder puts it up to a vote of the members of the quarterly conference, and they confirm. And the members of the quarterly conference are members of the church. Now, not all members of the church are members of the quarterly conference, but those who are members of the quarterly conference, that's when they have their say and their participation and play their role in confirming the stewards. At the quarterly conference, a member of the quarterly conference has every right to, whether it's to object or to make any comment, but at the end of the day, it's the vote of the body, right? So that person can object if that person is spiritually led, to do that, and then the elders at some point will call for a vote. See, we often at quarterly, even at every church, when the elder calls for a vote, we just do it. It's what we do. But we really need to seriously take stock at what we're doing. See it as when the Senate, U.S. Senate, is voting on Supreme Court justices who are nominated, or cabinet members who are nominated, or the slew of U.S. generals, and I think it's like over 5,000 presidential nominations, but they all have to be confirmed by the Senate. And it's an important role that the quarterly conference plays at the first quarterly conference. Sure. Let's go to, I think it's number 8. The pastor serves as the chairperson for both boards. Anyone saying false? All right. The vice chairs are elected by their board members. The vice chairs, how are they chosen? Yeah. And the vice chair, now those are appointments. I mean, and do not need to be confirmed who the vice chairs of either the steward board, trustee board, or any of the various optional commissions. And number 10, yes. Say that again. Right. It's false. Did I say true? No, it is false. Yeah. Okay. Finally, number 10, this is the last true or false. The steward board, chosen by the pastor, is the pastor's board, while the trustee board, duly elected by the people, is the people's board. I've heard that. You all have heard that too. It's not. I mean, it's not. I mean, you don't. You really don't. I mean, the role is important, but you're not getting on a board if you're asked, if you're nominated, because, to one extent, you do want to be the voice of the people. You do, and you should. You should hear what the members are saying, and you should take stock and bring those views to the board members, to the boards. You should. You really should, but not to the extent that you place yourself in this permanent stance that I'm here, not by the pastor, but I'm here to represent the people. There's a difference. There is a difference. We're all in this together. We really are. We are all in this together. You're here, whether you're a student or trustee, to work with the pastor, to represent and make sure that the voice of the members are being heard. But it's not, for instance, the only parallel that I can think of is what's taking place even now in the United States, this extreme far right versus the far progressive, or Democrats versus the MAGA movement versus and it's like they're both, it's almost like a permanent opposition. And that is not what God has called the church to be about. There's just one church, one foundation, and we ought to see that we're working together to build the church. Doesn't mean we'll always agree, but it does mean that we should not be permanently disagreeable. God's not in that. Let's call it what it is. He's not in this permanent disagreeable stance. And that goes for pastors as well. It does. Yes, Sister Patricia. It's okay. Now, of course, this is still true and false. We're going to get to the meat of. Go ahead. What if who feels? I think, yeah, I believe that the pastor, in prayer should consider many factors in coming to the decision of who would be the vice chair of the steward and the trustee board. What's that ideal set of qualifications that we think would be, I don't know who would possess that or who has that. The pastor just needs to know, be in prayer. Maybe a vice chair of the trustee of a steward board may not be as strong in one area, but has strengths in other areas that are important as well. So, it's hard for me or anyone to say that if a vice chair of a trustee board does not have an MBA, then that person's not qualified to be. I'm just giving an example, No, it's hard to, you're asking if a person is not qualified. My question to you then, who is it that measures? Or who is it that, if the pastor who has prayed about it and he or she believes that this is who God is directing his or her heart to appoint, then as vice chair, that is. Right, that person should then talk with the pastor, and yeah. Okay. But thank you for that question. Let's go now to things that we should consider as pastors and as officers. And again, these are just 10 points, and we can talk about it, but these are just 10, and there could be 40 things that we should consider. I limited down to just 10 points I just wanted us to collectively consider. Pastors should not only nominate individuals that they believe will always agree with them. Rubber stamp offices lend no strength to the boards and to the ministry of the church, and they only usher in room for a cult rather than a church. What do I mean by that? Yes, we are, and in the class that I teach for admission, how many students have been in my admissions class over the years? We talk about the difference, the historical difference between the connectional church and the congregational church. They're two different governance styles of different churches, and we go across the entire spectrum. The AME Church is a connectional church. We're bishop-led. We have a general conference. We are a denomination that hold churches accountable to governing in a way that's been set by the denomination. Having said that, the AME Church, in her wisdom, provides much room for the members of the local congregation to have I would say, a real meaningful and maximum role in helping to shape the direction and the movement of that church. Yes, that can take place. What you never want is an AME, and I'm speaking as a pastor, you never want a church where it gets to an AME church where it's basically the pastor saying, it's my way or the highway. When that happens, that's a cult. And we are not a cult. we have a powerful movement known as the lay organization. The lay organizations whose ministry, one of the ministries I believe of the lay organization, correct me if I'm not saying it correctly, is to educate and to teach and to train lay members to take leadership responsibilities. And so, pastors, you don't want only persons who you know will agree with you. You don't, that does not serve the interests of the church. You want persons on your board who you know sometimes will not agree with you and will call you up on it in an appropriate way. In an appropriate way. There's one, I'm not going to call her name, but all right, she told me to call her name. Because she reminds me, and she reminds me of my biological sister who died a few years ago from cancer. But personality, just like my sister Denise. And when Ronnie and my sister Denise met a few years ago before my sister died, they became like twin sisters in spirit. They really do. Because since Denise is 2 years older than me, since childhood, Denise and I fought and fought and fought and fought, but we loved each other to death. And so Ronnie, I believe she loves her pastor. No, she does. She does. But Ronnie is one of those officers, and I'll tell you another one. Sandra Jackson Jenkins is another one. Lynette Holmes, Renee Reed Goldsmith. These are four individuals who have no problem telling their pastor, who has been blessed to under-shepherd them now for almost 30 years, yet they have no problem telling their pastor, who tells them, I think I've been pastoring longer than you, but they still have no problem telling their pastor, no, pastor, we don't agree with this, and this is why we. Now, in my 30 years at Charles Street, I have never seen any of them disagree with me in an inappropriate way. They've never embarrassed, they've never. They're upfront, they're honest, they're transparent in the meetings. They'll let me have it. I'll walk out with a black eye, but it's okay. That happens in the meeting. And you know what? That makes the church stronger. Yes, that makes the church stronger. When you have devoted lay officers who passionately love their church, truth of the matter is, pastors leave, but lay persons, they stay. And so that's important. That's important. And pastors, identify those persons who, they don't, but that person has a set of skills that's needed and that I can benefit as a pastor. And that I know because they love the Lord, and they love the Lord, and they're believers in Christ, and they love the church, and they love you. You should have them on your boards. You should. Yes, Ronnie. Sure. Ronnie? No, Ronnie. No, that's a very good question. And here's the answer. And this is why I just think that the Amy Church and the governance, she was asking on the connectional level, since we're a connectional church, what input do the pastors and laypersons have, given that we are a bishop-led denomination? The answer is laypersons and pastors, clergy, are very much involved even on every level in shaping the direction of the church. For instance, the Amy Church was brilliant when they decided in 1948 that there will be equal number of lay delegates and clergy delegates elected from the annual conference to serve with their districts at the general conference. At the general conference, the composition, if you exclude the bishops, but the composition of the delegation of the delegates is equal clergy lay. And we have lay persons who will get up on the floor of the general conference. How many of you know Edith Cotledge? Remember what she did a few years ago? She tore the place up in the right way. but she's a layperson from New York. But no, laypersons are delegates to the General Conference. Laypersons are delegates to the annual conference. Laypersons are delegates to the district conference, and that is the opportunity for them to weigh in their voices. Even on the general conference level, the connection, you have the general boards, where every Episcopal district has one term, it's 3 clergy, 2 lay, and then the next quadrennial it's 3 lay and 2. So it's still always, we do have lay input, significant lay input on the connectional level as well. What I meant by congregational versus connectional, for instance, as you know, we partner with a congregational church, the Wellesley United Church of Christ. That is a congregational model church. The pastor will tell me, when I say, well, this is what I think we should do, and the pastor will say, well, I really don't have much of a role in the real decision making. And if I try, they will remind me, oh, no, that's not your role. Now, they respect their pastors, and the pastors, most UCC pastors have figured out a way how to influence and guide. But in terms of the actual specified role in governance, in the approval of budgets and all that, it's really the congregation that owns those decision-making roles. I'm sorry, Elder, you want to say something? Okay. Well, let's go to the next. Steward and trustee board meetings should be held regularly, whether that's once a month, or bi-monthly, or it should not be quarterly. It should not. But they should meet regularly. And this is 2023 now. We're no longer talking about the 20th century. The meeting should include a written agenda that should be emailed to the members. Most of us are on emails prior to the meeting. So you should see the agenda. The vice chair or the pastor sending it out, you should see it ahead of time. That creates a better informed, more opportunity for a board to be thoughtful, to know what they're walking into, and to have an opportunity to really thoroughly think about the issues when it's time for discussion. So that's just a thought. It's just a thought. Even if it's the night before or whatever, I'm not suggesting that you that's a good question, that you email it 2 weeks ahead of time. I mean, whatever works for the, and you know what? It's all right for that board to have that discussion, say, we would like to have the agenda, try to have it to us within 2 days, 3 days, the night before, whatever. But I think that's something that the boards and the pastor should work out. But the bottom line is that folks should know in advance what the agenda will be for the meeting. Any other, before we move on? I'm conscious of the time. Stewards and trustees should know their responsibilities, what they are tasked to do, and what extends beyond their scope. That's beyond their pay grade. All right? And this is something that I'm suggesting even for Charles Street. I thought about this week in preparation for this. So I'm not boasting that we do this, because we don't do this. And I think it's a good practice that we should do this. At the first meeting of the steward and trustee board meetings in that new conference year, which should serve as the organizational meeting of that board, your first meeting, the members should take time, along with the pastor, to acquaint themselves with their roles and responsibilities as outlined in the discipline. They should. We have not been doing it. I'm not saying that we're doing it at Charles Street, but I'm saying that's something that you may want to consider doing. Take the time at that first meeting. Just go over the road. Even if you've been a steward for 30 years, there's nothing wrong with reacquainting yourself, because you will discover there's something that you did not see the first time, or the 29th time, that you'll see the 30th time. And I'm hoping that all stewards and trustees by this time you are in possession of a 2021 discipline, because in 2 years, that discipline will no longer be in effect. We'll have a new discipline, but please. And of course, it's a 2021 discipline because why? Why? Right, COVID. That's when we held the general conference in 2021. They were sold out, I'm told, but you can go online. Yeah, you can go Amazon. You can still order them. You could still, but try to get possession of the discipline. Try to get the possession. And listen to this. Next point. This is again a follow-up, and this is something that I think we should all consider. At the final meeting of the steward and trustee boards in the conference year, both boards should take that time to then review the written roles and responsibilities as a way of measuring and evaluating. Okay, this is how well we did with this. This is what we have not done. Right, just as a way of doing that each year, because we should be operating as the discipline calls for us to do. Any questions about that? It's just a thought. Yes, sir. Yeah, yes. In fact, I have it. It's written in the 2021 discipline. If you go to pages 95 to 98, it talks about the role of the stewards, and then from 98 to 102, it discusses the role and responsibilities of the trustees in the discipline, and it's really delineated. Let's move on to the next one. Persons who are chosen as stewards and trustees should, and I said this before, should understand their work as sacred, holy, and as their ministry. Officers should not perceive their roles as a role that means to primarily fight and oppose the pastor or to keep the pastor in check. It's just, I'm not suggesting that any church in New England is doing that. I know that doesn't take place. But again, there's a difference between disagreeing on issues and just taking a permanent disagreeable stance. Like I said, like what's happening in Washington, D.C., if the Democrats say blue, the Republicans are going to say red. I mean, if they say high, the other will say low. They just won't agree on anything. They've just decided they're not going to. And we should not, the body of Christ, who are called to build the church, that should not be taking place in the church. There's no reason for that. In the prophecy of Isaiah, he says, "Come, let us reason together." Right? Any questions about that? Yes. Well, the pastor has the right to veto, but it also says in discipline that by 2/3, the board can override the veto. Right, but here's what it is: the energy that the pastor and the board should be focusing on is how do we reach a point where we can both touch and agree. The pastor may not, he or she may not get 100% of what he or she wants, and the board or the majority of the board may not get the 100, but we can get somewhere. We can get somewhere. The other thing is that, and I'll say it now, I think I was going to say it later on, but as you're asking the question, when we get to the vision, you'll understand what I'm about to say. But let's get to this next point because we're moving closer to the 12 o'clock hour. Stewards and trustees. Now, this is, I know, just want to say that this is something that we should really consider. We should not use the official board meetings and the church conferences to publicly voice opposition to decisions that were voted on and passed in the steward board or trustee board meetings that you were in. Your time, if I can put it that way, your time for debating issues, that's in the board meetings. And in those board meetings, go at it. Put on those spiritual boxing gloves and go at it. Really, no, and go at it, really. Just show your heart, your passion, your love for the Lord, what you believe God is saying to you. Share it. But once the vote is taken in the board meetings, and they're ready now to be presented to the church body, the officers should really try to stand as a united front. That brings order. And it may not mean that what was voted on, you personally agree, but you had an opportunity to voice, to try to weigh your perspective and try to weigh bring about influence as to how you believed or what you believe should be done. But at the end of the day, in the name of democracy, there's the vote, and the majority wins. And what the congregation needs to see is a united steward and trustee board, not divided leadership. Divided leadership will ultimately, inevitably create a divided congregation. I'm not even talking about pastor versus officer. I'm talking about the boards. You have to be united. But use the opportunity in your board meetings to be honest, to be transparent, to even if you disagree with the pastor, tell the pastor. Share that. And there's an appropriate way of doing that. But once the vote is taken, you go out as a united front. Let's move on to this next point, which I believe is very important. The pastor, and I'm saying this because I'm guilty of this in my years, particularly my first few years at Charles Street. And every once in a while, I have to check myself because I'm still growing. Pastors should not step out and embark on a major thrust without discussing and vetting it, those proposed undertakings, through the steward and the trustee boards. Pastors should not get up in the pulpit, it's just a thought, and say, this is what the church is going to do now. We're going to turn our direction left, and now we're going right, or whatever, without discussing it with the stewards and the trustees. If the pastor, this is just practically saying, if the pastor wants the buy-in from the offices, the pastor should value their consideration and their honest feedback and their suggestion and their wisdom. If the officers support the proposals, then, and this is what's important, and I think the members of Charles Street would say that we've been tried to be faithful in doing that. If the officers support the major undertaking, and then it should be not the pastor herself or himself, but it should be the pastors and the officers presenting that envisioned endeavor to the church conference. In fact, sometimes if the matter is presented to the steward board and the steward board votes on it but needs to take it to the official board, it's the steward board that will present it to the official board or to the church conference. Because the proposal is now in the hands, it's in the possession of the stewards. They voted on it, or the trustees. It's not just the pastor. Bishop Cousin used to say something that we always remember, that I still remember to this day. He said that a pastor should remember that a leader walking by himself or herself is simply taking a walk. If you want others to walk with you, the congregation, respect them. Respect their wisdom. Respect their insights. Respect their experience. And there have been times when just using myself as an example, when I believed that, yeah, this is what we should be doing. And after meeting with the stewards and the trustees, members, they were honest in voicing their perspectives why it's not a great idea. There were some times I stepped back. Didn't make me any less of a pastor. No. There are a number of things, a number of visions that I had for Charles Street that I thought, but after really listening to the officers, their greater wisdom is far greater than my one wisdom. And I believe that they were operating from a genuine perspective. They weren't just doing it just to knock it down, but they were doing it based on what they believed God was saying. God doesn't just talk to pastors. God doesn't just talk to pastors. We're in this together, this work called kingdom building. And this is 2023. Yeah, some of us are old enough to remember. Sandra, don't look at me this way. But some of us are old enough to remember that when we had pastors, if the pastor said the sky is purple, the sky was purple. That doesn't work in 2020, and that should not work in 2023. We have people who are spiritually gifted and love the Lord and are spiritually mature, but also have professional degrees, MBAs, PhDs, EDDs, DMins, DBAs, and all the rest that perhaps we did not have 50, 60 years ago. And we've got to respect the rich caliber of members who are sitting in the congregation, who love the Lord just like pastors do. By the way, we don't love the Lord any more than the people of God love the Lord. People love the Lord. The people in the church, believers in Christ, truly love the Lord. I really believe if you are a believer in Christ. But we should respect the assets that the offices and the lay leaders bring to the table. Ronnie will tell you, I'm learning, but I am not a financial wizard. I need a Rolanda Dudley Cowens to pull my tail and say, Pastor, you can't be spending. Really? So please, sisters and brother colleagues in the pastorate, welcome even more. I know you are doing it right, but welcome even more the wealth of wisdom and skills and gifts that our lay officers bring to the table. And then I think we just got two more. I'm still growing, but thank you. I'm not there yet, but I'm still growing. Let's move on. Stewards and trustees this is a question stewards and trustees should always be asking. It's not as much as what can we do, not just to only watch over and maintain what we already have, but what can we do to make our church an even better church? What new thing is the God of the new thing speaking into our ministries as stewards and trustees? God says, behold, I'm doing a new thing, forgetting the former things, right? A new thing. Our God is a God who's constantly doing the new thing. Are we doing a new thing? Remember, God, and listen, this is what I said earlier, God doesn't only give visions to pastors, but he calls all of God's chosen leaders in his reign, in God's reign, kingdom building, to receive and speak visions. Pastors, as under-shepherds, should welcome their offices as co-visionaries, partner in dreaming, charting the course, building and working and accomplishing this new work of God together. I love the emphasis of our organized laity. What do they say? Clergy and lay together, or something to that extent, but it's together. And God may give you a vision for your church. Share it. Share it with your pastors. Share it in your boards. Pastors are not the model of that we see in Exodus of only Moses going up to Mount Sinai and hearing from God and then coming back and saying, this is what we're going to. Now, pastors have a responsibility to share vision as well. After much prayer, I mean, people should respect and honor that there are visions that the pastor has, but the pastor is not the only one who God speaks to. Lay persons, let me also say this. Make sure that it is God speaking to you. And not just, I want to tell my mind. No, really, it's got to make sure that it's spiritual. We can work, we can walk together. Of course, stewards and officers should be faithful in their worship attendance, stewardship, and active participation in the life of the congregation. All offices have different gifts. There's no one-size-fits-all carved out box for all offices to fit in. Some offices, because they may have some tremendous gifts in some areas that really lend value to the church, support to the pastor, support to the church, and may work as offices in a good way in some areas, but may not be able to excel in other areas. For instance, I'll give you an example. We have at Charles Street one officer who is a medical doctor. What's the term when you're working on, what is that called? When you work at the hospital, you're what? No, it's when you're on duty, whatever, when you're at the hospital. There's a medical term, on call, right? This person is on call on Sunday mornings. So you're not going to see this person maybe once in a while, but this person is the chief physician at that hospital and is on call on Sunday mornings. This person is a tither. This person financially supports the church. This person calls, checks on the pastor. How's the church doing? What does the church need? Pastor, are you in need? Pastor, how I can. So there are different, we can't say that, okay, if that person doesn't check this box and then but may check other boxes, then that person should not be a student trustee. I think pastors need to be prayerful. And then pastors need to also consider other reasons that pastor, he or she, should not share with everyone. Why it is of ministry for that person to be able to be a blessing to the church. It may be an immense ministry to that person, where that person is. You never know. Things that only a pastor should know and would know. So there are a lot of variables that need to be considered. Finally, and this is a no-brainer, but I say this because we are in the Zoom world where, and you know, and I want to say this. I thank God, we all thank God for, under presiding elder Herbert Eddy, served as presiding elder of this district for 33 years. And I've said this before, and I know this to be the case, how he was able on one day to cover 3 states, driving everywhere. That was needed because that was the vehicle, the only vehicle that we had at the time. And he did it well. We now have been blessed with the virtual world where, now sometimes it is important to have in-person meetings, but a lot of our meetings can take place and can be effective virtually. So our presiding elder now, presiding elder Lovelace, in her wisdom, and I'm so glad that she's not on the road, because no other presiding elder district covers 3 separate states than our presiding elder. So I'm glad she's convening quarterly conference via Zoom. And they're just as effective. However, when you're presiding elder, in fact, do up your hair, put your makeup on, brothers comb your hair as well. But when you're presiding elder, particularly the first quarterly conference is confirming you as a steward, you should not be on no video. That is, and some of you will remember, a few years ago, I had to tell a couple officers, put your video on. Your presiding elder is getting ready to confirm you. She has a right to see who you are. So please respect and honor the presiding elder, particularly the quarterly conferences, stewards and trustees. I've never seen the presiding elder convene a meeting when she's off video. She's always on video. And we should respect her as well. All right? Thank you. Any questions? I don't know if we have time for questions, or maybe just a few questions or comments. Disagreement? I mean, that's fine. Is there something that was missed, or is there something else that should be brought to this body? Please share it. Pastors, lay officers, please. Yes, Reverend Nurse. Yeah, good point. That's a very good point. Bishop Cummings used to say, and please keep it in the right context, because in the church there really are no enemies, right? We don't have enemies. But he would say in a generic form, what would he say? Your friends you have with you, your enemies you have even closer to you. So, and presiding elder Lovelace knows exactly what I'm talking about. There was a presiding elder in the Philadelphia conference, very powerful presiding elder. In fact, he was the pastor of the leading church in Philadelphia at the time. When Bishop Cummings had the vision to build the headquarters, this presiding elder voiced fierce opposition, even though most of the first district, the membership said, yes, we should do this. Now, this is going back to 1984, 85. I remember this. This presiding elder said, absolutely not. No way it's going to be done. Well, Bishop Cummings appointed him as chair of the committee to build the headquarters. And this presiding elder tremendously, was a force and did the job so well. He helped us get over the finish line. Am I right? He's in glory now, but that's an example that you can, even those who disagree with you, even the bishops, all of us, feel comfortable in, let's trust everyone's spirit. Let's trust that everyone in the church, believer in Christ, that they come with good intentions, even if they don't agree with you, that you can learn from them and benefit and grow from their wisdom. So thank you, Reverend Nurse. Someone else? Yes. Thank you, and thank you so much. And I want to say to you, we certainly continue to pray for Reverend Pedro Castro, our pastor of Grand Amy Church, as he is still adjusting. It's going to be a long time, perhaps may never adjust, as many of us as we grieve over the loss of Reverend Stephanie. We certainly honor that. But I also want to thank God for you, because I know the role that you played in her life. You walked with her, and there were a lot of times that she depended on you. Even before she was diagnosed, you were there. And so I know it's not easy for you as well, even to be here today. And so I acknowledge and I thank God for you. And great. Dr. Clark? Thank you, Dr. Clark. Thank you. And again, these are just some thoughts. I know that if any pastor was asked to stand here, that pastor would give his or her thoughts. They may be different thoughts, because there are a lot of things to consider. But lay leadership, AME Church should really be about lay leadership. At our church, and I even started when I was at Bright Temple, who chairs? I mean, the pastor is the chair of boards, but who chairs the meetings, trustee boards and steward board meetings? It's the vice chairs. I like the vice chairs. In fact, they even write the agendas. My only request is let me see the agenda before it goes out. So if I need to add something, or if I say, well, maybe we should consider table this. But the vice chairs, they send out, am I correct, the agendas? They chair the meetings. The pastors are in the meetings, and when I need to speak, I'll speak. But the vice chairs, they run them. I'm comfortable with them running the meetings. I mean, this is what lay empowerment should be about. Now, I'm not 100%. I'm still growing myself, but yeah. All right. Yes, Ronnie. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yep. Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you. She's absolutely right. Yeah. And also, before I take my seat, pastors intentionally think, we always talk about what's this new term, DEI. DEI is what? Diversity, equity, inclusion. Well, it goes for the same in the church. Always think about how your boards can become more diverse. I was excited. One year yes, we do have brothers and sisters on the steward board who are African Americans. They came from the South and all that. But we also still have a number of Caribbean. My vice chair is a brother from Haiti. One year we had a brother from Haiti, from Liberia, and from Nigeria. And whenever those three argued with each other, I just sat back, tried to understand what they were saying, and it happened a few times. But the point is that think diversity. Think, how can you best see that your church is fully represented? Lynette will tell you there's one person on the steward board who is on the steward board. He has MS. He's completely paralyzed. But his mind is sharp. He loves the Lord. He's written 2 books. And he attends steward board meetings. I wanted him on that board, and the steward board agreed, because he needs to bring that voice of how we can become a better church in really being fully inclusive, to those with different abilities. Right? So you got to think about those things as well. I think it's time for worship. Thank you, Elder.